Everybody, welcome to the Jess plus Scott plus You show, where we are asking the question, what are hobbies? Do they have a place? And have they gone away and become obsolete? Among many other conversational pieces tonight. So, where does that take us for the open? It's one of those things where I thought it was appropriate to get something off of my shelf. And this is the little box. It says on the top, take what you need. I'm going to shake it up and I'm going to pull something out and I'm going to read it. And I'm going to grab this one, and apparently at this moment in time, the word on here is courage. So what does courage look like in the fact that I need it, and I pulled it out of my little fortune box right now? We'll have to take that under advisement and see what that might mean. If I were to say something right off the bat, though, I would say it takes courage to explore a topic of things that some of us take for granted, some of us might not even know we have, and some of us that feel deprived or maybe are deprived because they don't know what a hobby is. And the courage to explore a topic that has a changing experience based off of our technology, based off of our society, based off of the experiences we're able to have, is very interesting to explore. And I'm looking forward to spending the next few minutes with Scott and discussing that with you guys. We'll be right back after the open.
Okay, Jess, all yours.
Where have all the hobbies gone, Scott? Where have they gone? And, you know, I have a question before we get started and start answering that question, maybe with what is a hobby. Did you indulge in anything you consider to be a hobby today?
Oh, today. Oh, this is a surprise question as well.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be part of the meat of our conversation as well, because if you do something that you really like or really love, does that become a hobby? And I'm thinking back, I had to stall while I was actually thinking of my answer. And yes, I did indulge in something that I thought was a hobby, and that was baking. So we had freshly baked bread this morning. Is that a hobby?
Well, don't ask me. I think it's really subjective. Although I have to tell you, before we go in that, we have to take a segue. I'm so impressed that you can talk out loud while you're formulating a thought and not lose what you were saying. I know, you have to save the day a couple of times because I'm like, whoop, it went in a bubble and floated away. I was formulating a little too long. Okay, so is it a hobby? Well, how about if we define what is a hobby? What's a hobby to you, Scott?
Well, when I was growing up, a hobby was anything that you did not make money at that you enjoyed. I mean, it was just that simple. So it could be if you worked on your car in the backyard and restored an antique Model T, that was a hobby. If you, on the other hand, had an old clunker and it was forever breaking down and you had to, piece it together with baling wire, that's not a hobby.
Right, and so to add to what you said, I would say without an agenda. Exactly, and your description of the cars made that. If you have to piece it together and you're out there working on it to make it go so you can get to point A to point B, doesn't matter how much you love the car or doing the work on the car, there is an agenda. There's a need to get from a point A to a point B. Okay, yeah, without an agenda. And what was yours that you liked to do? You didn't earn any money at it.
A hobby was distinguished because and usually it would cost you money, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Equipment. Well, now along the same lines, if it costs money and you didn't make any money on it and you do it for the love of it with no agenda, does it require a skill set?
Oh, that's a great question. And a hobby, I'm just trying to think of what a hobby would be without a skill set. Someone could say, well, my hobby is being a couch potato, and I just watch daytime television and the soap operas and comics and sports, and my hobby is watching football on the weekends. And somehow that just seems like cheating to me as a hobby.
I don't know, and maybe there's an inadvertent skill set in that. Like somebody comes over and it's the perfect time, and you know that person so well, and you know the online TV guides so much, you know exactly what show to put on. So there is a skill, even.
Well, I mean, sure, there are people who, for example, go out and they coach Little League Baseball. That's a hobby, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. Now we're going to get into some of the conversation because people depend on you. It is a responsibility when you're the coach of a Little League team. So it might have started out as a hobby, but even when things get tough or some other things, does it remain a hobby when you've got these responsibilities that go with it?
Man, there are all sorts of things. There's someone I know who is a ham radio operator. Now, ham radio operation is a hobby, but now he's started a club for young people. So kids in junior high and high school come by, and he toes the line. He makes them get their license and learn Morse code, even though that's no longer required for a ham radio license. And they go out hiking and they do other sorts of things. Again, well, I think we're trying to define a hobby.
Yeah, I think it's subjective. And I think that's where you were going with this, that there's a little bit of subjectivity to it, because what I might consider responsibility for something, somebody else might not consider a responsibility. So it could still fit that initial criteria. There's no other agenda except for to do it because you love it, and it definitely takes time, but it might cost some money, and you look forward to doing it.
Sure, but I'm also wondering if the definition of a hobby is universal through time, or if it changes from decade to decade. Is a hobby different?
I think it is. I actually think it is, and I know I want to table that a little bit and come back to it later, because we could totally take a tangent right now, which is okay with me.
That's why this is the Jess plus Scott plus you show. That's Jess is first, because you keep us on track. I'll try and make us go to the stratosphere, but you'll keep us grounded.
Well, and I think it's so cool. I also love to bake. I don't cook, but I bake, and there's a big distinction there. I can cook. I'm just not as good at it as I am at baking things, Scott. So we share that in common, and I enjoy the times that I get to do that, even though it's few and far between. Another one of my hobbies is reading biographies. I like a good fiction book. I tend to read that before bed, though. I love to read in general, and I read a ton of business books, but just by the categorization, that cannot, I suppose it could be a hobby, but it's all about learning and improving and expanding ideas for other things. So to sit down and learn about somebody's life and hear their stories and just collect wisdom is really neat, and I might only get to sit down for 5 minutes once a week or once every other week to sit down with a biography that I happen to be reading and really soak it in and become totally oblivious to the world around me. And I really relish in that. And and then it comes to, I would add a frequency. I don't know if there is a frequency to when somebody has a hobby, because I would consider that my hobby, and I would consider that one of my only hobbies, something that there's no agenda, because really now these days I bake with an agenda. There's something to bake for, and I get excited because I get to bake for something, but my definition of a hobby, that's excluded. I just get to do something else I like and have an okay skill at.
I think that you and I differ a little bit in terms of the definition of a hobby, because once it becomes obligatory, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's no longer a hobby. But what we're doing is we're doing a deep dive, really thinking and going into all of the nooks and crannies and so forth. So reading certain books for you are an obligation, and you do it because of your work, and others it is the satisfaction of your curiosity, and it is an end unto itself. So maybe that's part of a definition of a hobby as well. But later on we're going to be stirring the pot and making this a lot more complicated, aren't we, Jeff?
And you know what, Scott? We are so good at that. everybody joining us. This is the Just Plus Got Plus You show, and we are talking about hobbies. Where have all the hobbies gone? And we've put a little bit of definition around hobby, what it might be, how it works, do you need skills for that? And then, the next piece is there's this whole movement for Generation X and the baby boomers and everybody else that to stop just doing your job and go work your passion or turn your passion into a job and have a career. So then we have this idea of multiple streams of income. And how does that fit into a hobby, or does it replace hobbies when we might do it for the love of it? We might enjoy the curiosity and going out and learning all of this, but now we have the demands of actually putting income to provide for our families, to pay the bills that we need to pay, to be good members of society and be part of the value equation.
Yeah. So nobody thinks that we're going to go back to the 1950s or the 1980s or even the 1990s. We are going forward, and so the environment in which we find ourselves is different. No longer are there employers who are going to give a traditional style retirement plan. You've got IRAs and those sorts of things. And this ties in because someone today is going to likely have 7 careers. We've had a whole show about that. And so sometimes they are sequential and sometimes they are in parallel. That's different than what it used to be. And when one has to pick and choose 7 different things that they want to do, they need to go to something that they have an aptitude for, something for which there's a demand, something that they enjoy, something that is sustainable in terms of cost, all of those sorts of things. So the relationship between doing something that is your passion and being forced to just scramble to come up with something that will meet all of the criteria to keep body and soul together is different today than what I think it used to be. What do you think, Jess?
I would agree, and maybe that's why I might do things that I enjoy, but I don't consider them hobbies because I like to enjoy the things that I do. And in fact, I am incredibly passionate about everything that I do, but it might not, sometimes it's other people's passion, and I get excited about it for them, and I get excited about the excitement. But in the end, it's great that it's fulfilling, but I am not living my passion, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Well, I'm going to put on a hat. It does kind of. The question I have is when someone who just immerses themselves into something that they're doing, and let's say it just turns out to be something that they earn money at. Well, isn't that the definition of a workaholic? So I wanted to, somewhere along the line, bring that word into this discussion.
That's so funny because when I was telling Ryan the working title of the show, which happens to be the title of our show, Where Have All the Hobbies Gone? He looks at me and he goes, "It means we're all working too hard." And so I was like, "Oh, that's so great, Scott, that you bring that in," because I think that's something that we have to consider when we have multiple streams of income. Whether we get excited about something, we're passionate about it, we go and we build a career around it, and we're earning money, whether or not we feel the obligation of the need to earn money, or we're looking for a lifestyle, so we're having multiple streams of income so that there's this passive income coming, and we've always got our basic needs met. I love that. Are we workaholics because we try and turn all of our passions into something that possibly could make us money? But now we're back into, well, now you have an agenda for what you're doing. So does it bring you joy, or is it a hobby?
And who decides, is the term workaholic something that is imposed upon you from the outside, or is it because the olic part of it makes it kind of like an alcoholic as well. There's a negative connotation to it. So it's almost as if someone has a passion for history, and they immerse themselves in it. And some people actually will construct rooms that are of a period, and they'll dress up, and they will learn the vocabulary and the vernacular of the time, and they will actually live that experience as if they were in the 17th century, something like that, or colonial times, and they'll go out with their muskets and they will recreate the Gettysburg, not the Gettysburg Address, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, okay. So and I think that they're bringing a skill, and they are and what they love to do is also passing on a history, which I think people do through their hobbies, in terms of if they have a skill set and they start a club, like your ham radio friend. They're passing on the skills to other people that have a similar interest, and they're creating a way to learn something that's not as mainstream anymore and bring people that are like-minded together. And it makes me think of the conversation that we had a few weeks ago about community and what do communities do. And so I think that I think there are so many ways to go about this, and I'm going to share a comment that we had before the show, and Tim was sharing that when he paints, he gets a joy and a release because it helps others and he can appreciate it and benefit. Then the thing is, when he's sharing a story, depending on what's involved, some hobbies are more difficult as production compared to fine art painting. Not all hobbies transition well into income streams with the same effect they have before they were monetized. For instance, I watched my mother and grandmother knit and crochet to relax. Later, they decided to try to monetize their skill. Due to the amount of pressure when they were marketing their craft and work to keep up the supply, most of the joy was lost for them, as opposed to when they did it as a hobby and a way to give special gifts. So I think that's something that we really have to consider, because we might have a passion and we might consider that our hobby, and we might go, wow, we can make money at this, yet what are we left with when it's done? And that's why I get the term obligation, because there are a lot of things I could probably turn into income streams, but do I really want to? Or can I fit it somehow and bring joy from the tasks at hand that need to be done into what I'm doing to make the things that I don't like within my work a little bit more enjoyable?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're really dance. This is quite a dance that we're having, because it is a hobby. Almost by definition, has to be fun, and if it isn't fun, then somehow it's no longer a hobby. Just because it's an obligation doesn't remove the relative fun factor from it, but it sure is a lot more difficult if you have to do something when other things come in. So it's almost as if the rest of your life has to be able to accommodate your hobby, because if you've got a hobby and yet you're worried about paying for the mortgage or your next meal, it's almost impossible for there to be that relative fun value with a hobby. It's almost the last thing, the last indulgence that you can have, and not the first.
I so agree with you, and that makes me think about hobby in relationship to passion. I am really passionate about having fun in the work that we do. I am really passionate about making sure that people see all sides of a picture to make an informed decision. I'm passionate about those things, and I talk about them for free. I share my opinions. I want to see the success of other people. I contribute in conversations around that, but I really don't think that that's a hobby. That is me sharing a skill set. That is me doing a lot of things, and I suppose it could be a hobby. Would I do it if I didn't get paid for it? Yes. So, but I also would do it if I didn't get paid for it because it's a passion. So I'd like to explore a little bit. What do you think? Because I don't know. Are hobby and passion synonymous for this conversation when we're talking about income streams?
Well, I'm going to be I'm going to be really pretty hardcore right now, and that is that they're.
What? You hardcore?
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, what type of reputation? Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll soften the blow a little bit by relating it to something else, and then I'll bring it home.
Okay.
When I was very deeply involved with community access television, we had literally hundreds of people who would be spending time creating programs, citizen-produced video programs. And they were very serious about it because they thought that this might be something for their career or that they might be able to make money out of it or, all sorts of things. But after a while, you could just tell that there were people who were just devoting a lot of time and effort to it, and yet they were getting nowhere. It was an indulgent for them. They were never going to become a star. They were never going to hit the big time. They were never going to go beyond public access television. And so at the end of the day, regardless of what they self-defined their mission to be or who they were indulging in a hobby. It was a hobby and not a job. And I see a lot of people with Hangouts on Air, and they spend a lot of time, and there's a lot of effort, and they have high hopes, and yet, for whatever reason, they're stuck. And it's a similar phenomenon, I think, that it's at the end of the day, you just say, I'm sorry, but regardless of what you want it to be, it's a hobby because it's what it is.
Okay, well, it sounded like somewhere in there limiting beliefs might exist for those people. And so is there a fear factor that that particular case, that there's only so far that could be gone, so I might as well enjoy where I'm at because it's as far as I'm going to go? Do we hide behind our hobbies?
Oh, that's a great question, because if instead of facing our fears, we divert into, so is a hobby a diversion?
Well, and that's totally okay if it is. I think we all need them. I also think we all need our own rabbit holes, and I think we all need the things that we obsess about. I think that we've, hopefully, well, if they're all the same thing, lucky you, but they tend to be different things, I think. And I do think, and I would take that back to multiple streams of income. I wonder, do we feel like we have to have multiple streams of income because we don't believe enough in our skill set or our ability to do whatever it would take to earn an income, that we just have all of these, and this is more for my generation than the new generation, the generations after me. They want multiple streams of income. They want that diversity. What I was taught to diversify, to save and diversify those savings so not all my eggs were in one basket to retire, is now what I'm doing to earn a living, or my generation and the people after me are doing to earn a living today. And is that a little bit of and I'm going to use the word diversion because it came to mind, but is there a little bit of a fear factor there that I have to have more than one stream of income to live the lifestyle I want?
I will turn now. I'm going to do 180. I was going down the path. Now I'm going to take the opposite side, and that is that even if we wanted to have a single focused life where this is what I do and this is how I earn my income, for a lot of people nowadays that's just not going to be in the cards. And there are personas of people who are turning what might be their hobbies or things that they enjoy into multiple streams of income, whether it be sequential or at the same time. And there's something new that's coming out, passive income, and we could talk about that a little bit later if you like. So what are the personas? You've got people who are retired. They're being edged out of traditional employment, not as fast as the millennials and Generation X would like, but they're still leaving traditional employment. So what do? They don't want to retire like their folks or their grandparents did. They want to stay active and they want to continue to earn money. So they turn around and they do things that they have a passion about, that they have fun about, that they've got a skill set about, but they also try and earn money at it. But then there are also the millennials and maybe the Generation X's who are out of college and there's not a job market out for them. It's the Great Recession came by and for the first time, they might not be better off than their parents. So what do? They scramble and they try and figure out what to do. And what we're talking about is fertile ground for them to actually make a living. Then you have women. Women are competing in the marketplace, but there's still that glass ceiling, and there is still, less money per hour for comparable jobs. And what they're finding, and they want to take back the ability to continue to be in family. I mean, it's very complex, but they're discovering that they can take, what's the word I'm looking for? Their own destiny, their destiny in their own hands. That's what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. We had a program a couple of weeks ago on that very thing with Laney's group. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then who else do we have? Then there are entrepreneurs, just people who have the spirit to go out and take chances. And for them, it's if you don't fail, and maybe fail fast, then you're not really exploring all of the possibilities. And then at the end of the day, there's the final thought, and that there are some who believe that we're in kind of a new era, a new age, that it's just stepping into a new space where the new norm is going to be multiple streams of income and a more diversified, well-rounded life rather than what we've had. And it isn't that we won't specialize, but it's that we will specialize in any number of things and then connect the dots. And when you connect the dots from different disciplines, then you have exponential growth. And
that's really tricky. And that was a really neat way that you tied all those things together. And I'm going to come in on the end because I could speculate about the way that it was, but there are too many of you watching that would know what generation I'm in just by what comes out of my mouth. So we're going to leave Scott's amazing words and description of that as the basis for what I'm going to say next, in the sense that, I think that you bring up some really good points, Scott, where there are many people in my generation, and definitely my oldest niece's generation, and then down into Carter's generation, where there is not going to be as much money accumulated and wealth accumulated as our parents. Now, I'm making this a huge generalization, and it's really interesting because I remember some of my friends growing up, their parents had a weekend job in addition to their regular 9-to-5 job during the week. I had a man come in, being one of us in our house is a perfectionist, so we don't hang our own pictures and we don't put up things like closets, do-it-yourself closets. So I had somebody come in to put in a do-it-yourself closet so it would actually get done in a few hours instead of a few days. And he brought his grandson, and so it was this grandfather who did this amazing construction work and built houses and designed all of this stuff, retired, decided he wanted something to do, and his grandson wanted to learn a craft to be handy. He was learning this craft, and I will tell you what, even if he's living his passion and doing something that's not earning him money, he now has a skill that can help him earn money to do what he does. And that art that he creates, and I'm going to use art very generally here, in whatever spurs our heart to come into creation, whether that's writing or drawing or storytelling or baking or whatever we could put around that. I think that there's something that there are certain skills that we can always fall back on to have to help us earn a living through really tough times. And that might make less time for hobbies, yet in some way, having that basis taken care of, I know I have a skill that can help me pay my bills, actually changes a mindset of, where is my next paycheck going to come from? How am I going to feed my kids? Am I going to be able to pay for lights? Do I actually have more than my phone to do Hangouts from, or whatever it might be for each of us in our own scenarios? If we can get that basis taken care of, I think there's a different mindset to how we approach our life. And what do we consider joyful? And can we bring joy to the things that we have? So it goes back to the needs pyramid. And I don't think it takes a lot to do that. And, one of the words that you used, Scott, in preparation for this show was enoughness.
Yes. So what is enoughness? And we are now ready in society to maybe at long last ask that question. Because at one time it was a consumer and it was just getting more and disposable and planned obsolescence and continuous growth and growth and growth. And I always figured that was, like inhaling. Well, how long can you inhale before you can't inhale anymore?
Right.
So and I had not run across the word enoughness, the concept of enoughness, until recently, in terms of that word. So I'm wondering if I've just been out of town, or if that's just one of those new words that's cropping up.
Well, I like enoughness because it encompasses everything else, right? Like keeping up with the Joneses is is some sort of subjective enoughness. I don't have enough, whereas we actually really do, and I think it takes a mind shift, and there needs to be. Let me take out the word need. When there is a space in our brains or our lives or our existence when there is space, it's amazing what we can see, and it's amazing that when we might explore, what if we didn't have that? What would our life look like? What if we had to, face a fear and go, I'm going to imagine if that actually happens, and I'm going to imagine if the exact opposite, and that never happens. What do each of those look like, and how do I feel around those? So having that space in our brain to really explore what's enough, I actually think the people that are the people that are in, and we're going to go into subjective mode again, enough, even if there's a little bit of worry about where money might come from, or a little bit of worry about how am I going to retire. I'm good now, but how am I going to retire, right? Whatever we have a worry around, if we can set it aside enough to have some space, and we're living in the present, and we have joy in everything that we bring, and we're able to be playful and find a bit of fun in everything that we're doing, I think that we can explore enoughness. I think that would be the basis for being able to talk about enoughness.
The concept of enoughness allows us to give ourselves permission to make the space, and part of the deliverables of tonight's conversation might be that for a life to be lived with a hobby in it, and we're defining hobby, there has to be enough space. And a question that I would have is, can you imagine an entire life that is lived without having created enough space so that you could step into a hobby and do something that is the self-expression that is in the embodiment of a hobby?
Yeah, and here we go. We've got a conundrum. Terry is sharing a conundrum. Computer programming started out as a hobby for me, but quickly it became an income source as well. No matter, the depth of absorption that I enjoy while doing it has never diminished, so my avocation and vocation have become one and the same. Okay, that was, I enjoyed saying that because I got to practice some amazing syllables with these braces, and I'm like, oh, there's some words I should just say in the mirror. Thanks, Terry.
I do have to say that I've thought of Terry about 3 or 4 times during this conversation, because so much of what we are all striving for, he seems to have accomplished in his multiple faceted life.
Which is awesome. And I think, and I'm going to bring up Ray's show this morning. My takeaway for Ray's show today was about personal values. And it might start with something as seemingly simple as that. What are the values that I want to live my life by? And what is necessary to make that happen? And then maybe there's going to be some space so that the questions and the what-ifs around enoughness might be able to work, that allow a different kind of space for other expression and the curiosity. One of the things, Terry, we're going to just talk about you right in front of your face, because one of the things I like about Terry is the curiosity, and that's one of the things that I have. That's why I'm like, this is really hard, and I really think I only have to hobbies, and I very rarely actually do them because I'm so curious and excited about other things that it's a joy to do them. Now, there are things I do that are not a joy, and I'm okay with that also. But that's kind of what life is, isn't it, Scott? And how do we know what could be a hobby or what we're doing for the love of it unless we know what we really didn't like also?
I'm going to throw a curve at you.
Okay.
As well. And I know that's one of your themes as well, because you have the yin and the yang, and you have all of that. And we should do a show on that sometime. We really should. And
no.
that is,
okay,
there are a lot of things that you do with Carter.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if now you have permission to go back and do fun things that might be kind of hobby-esque under the umbrella, under the guise of just being a good parent. Have you ever thought of that?
Yes.
Artwork or whatnot.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And so in those moments, there is so much joy when we're doing something like that. Oh, sure. But there's also then the requirements of what I have deemed being an active, involved, supportive parent. Maybe that's a helicopter parent. We'll find out in a few years. Maybe we could put all kinds of words around that. But you're right, Scott. We're going to go back to the fun. There are things that, and I wouldn't consider them hobbies, but I sure would consider them things that I want to explore that I'm still curious about or can get curious about in a way that hopefully instills a curiosity that stays for Carter as he grows.
Yeah. And hobbies keep us alive. Hobbies keep us alive, because without hobbies, what do you do?
Oh, there's a lot we can do, and I would say I'm not sure. I don't know if I would agree with you. I would say, how about
keep us growing.
Shine. They
Shining.
keep us bright. They let our inner light shine the brightest. There's a lot of stuff that we could do that keeps us alive. And we could do it. We might even find a little bit of joy in it. But when we've got this hobby, we really light up inside. And there's something that is contagious about it, and we are drawn to other people whose lights are brighter. And hobbies, I think, are definitely a way to allow that to occur. So we should transition to the shout about, and then we'll come right back, and we are going to bring this back to, we're going to try and wrap this up. Scott and I like to talk a lot, so we're going to wrap this up and tie it back to the me first theme of our season. See you in a minute.
1, 2, 3, 4, get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great. 9, gonna shine, life is good. I'm doing fine. 10, gonna do it right and do it again, yeah. I look into the sky with all the beautiful colors.
There are 3 C's that we're going to talk about today when we talk about strutting your stuff. Contributing, creating, and caring. Why does that matter? Because you're different. And you're different just like a peacock. A peacock is different because every single peacock has its own array of feathers with its own unique beauty and symbolism, as do you. So what's important to you? What ticks you off a little bit? What gets you excited? Where you want to see change? And most importantly, the gift that you bring to this world with you, that's what makes you different. And if you don't talk about it, and if you don't create around it, how do you find like-minded people to pool those energies to create forward momentum? That forward momentum impacts the world, our immediate world, which ripples out to other people's immediate worlds, and we get to learn from each other. Strut your stuff like a peacock with your own uniqueness. It matters how you speak. It matters your personality. It matters the way you choose to dress, all of which, summed up together, are who you are. And when there's consistency in that, people start to recognize that, and your core values can be seen. If every time that you are sharing a piece of information or putting together some sort of article or something for your community, and you show up and you talk a little different, or you're dressed very differently, and there's no consistency there, It takes people longer to figure out what you're about, and they're more interested in figuring out what you're about than what you're actually sharing with them. So be on top of things. Take advantage of the fact that we are, as a people, we want to hear your message, but first we want to know you too. And in that, we go back to the 3 C's. Create. Do something that's of interest to you, to share it with others. Contribute. Connect those ideas. Expand on other people's ideas. And together, build something that didn't exist before with the combined energy. And care. Care for yourself. Care for the others around you. And most importantly, let your heart shine.
I won $1 million like it hit the pay dirt. Gonna smile from ear to ear, the kind that makes your face hurt. And we'll laugh, jump, sing loud, not afraid to shout about being happy, living it out. Take a look and see a beautiful morning.
It makes me laugh. When I saw that again, I was laughing. Peacock. We're all like peacocks.
I was wondering what that was all about.
I know.
I knew.
Yeah, I know you know. But still, it's all good. So let's tie this back to where have all the hobbies gone? And we're in the season of the supreme unselfishness, putting ourselves first. So like me, when I have hobbies, but I might not get to them except for maybe once a month sometimes. Maybe some of them, they're just kind of out there collecting dust. Like yoga. I do yoga for the sake of yoga and for the time to myself and for doing that, and there's no other agenda associated with it. And it just is not something that I am doing right now. So I know it's there, and I'll pick it back up again sometime. But when I think about me first, there are other things that I want to do that are related to the me first that have nothing to do with hobbies, like my health or making sure that I am involved in the life of my husband as a couple, as then the two of us as a couple, and as the family, and then as the role I play as a mom and a friend. And definitely I can't leave out the stuff that I do for my work and my businesses, because that's a really big part of who I am. So I feel like I put myself first a lot of ways, and my hobbies are obsolete for that, even though I get to dust them off once in a while and pull them out and really relish that time. The joy that I have and the path that I'm on and the time that I'm in my life, I'm going to say my hobbies are becoming a little obsolete, and I am looking forward to a time when I expect them to return, and there's a possibility they won't, I guess. What about you, Scott?
Well, I'm taking a little bit of a different approach, and that is that the more accomplished, the higher up on the needs or Maslow's pyramid, or however you want to phrase it, the more able we'll be able to blur the line between hobbies and what we do to earn money to make a life. So at the end of the day, I guess it's being well balanced. It's giving enough space to take care of all of the various pockets of needs that we have, and one of them is to do some things that we would do even if we weren't paid for it. Maybe that's the definition of a hobby, is even if we weren't paid for it, we would do it and we would get all the joy in the world. And so if we could accomplish all of that, then maybe that would be a life well learned. And so who knows? Have we resolved the issues and the questions about hobbies and work and the blurring of the line, or are we just about where we started with this conversation?
Well, I think we're just where we started, and I'm going to add to that. So, what's a hobby? What's work? Thanks, Trina. This is a great contribution. What will we feel about it when we lie down to die? What does love have to do with it? And isn't that the measure of value that counts? I work a lot. Is it for a hobby? Almost everything I do could be considered a hobby since I enjoy it so. Even the people who live in my house aren't regular renters. Are they hobbies? Maybe. I like that because it extends. I think our hobbies do have a ripple out effect, and I think when we enjoy what we do, we also have that ripple out effect. And I do think that that's a big blurred line. I saw a whole bunch of definitions that are going to come in, and we should compile them all together, what we were talking about and what others are sharing. And my big thing is I consider it something that I absolutely positively love and find joyful, that even when I have to do it, it's not, even though it might be a responsibility, it's not an obligation, if that makes sense. But I also do like to do the things that have no purpose other than life and to make me happy. and yeah.
Sounds good, Jess.
That cracks me up. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this season of this. Wow, it's not the end of our season. This episode of the Jess plus Scott plus You show. Where have all the hobbies gone? And Scott and I did a lot of exploring, and we want you to continue the conversation. There is so much conversation to have around this, around the subjectivity of it, around enoughness, around our own personal contributions and goals and paths and where we are in our lives. Are we just starting out? Do we have skills that we want to learn? Are we able to maintain curiosity all the way through that? Are we looking for something to keep our energy up? Who knows? There are so many different things, and it's your thoughtful conversation that makes these types of ideas come to the forefront of people's minds, and really to take a look at it for ourselves. And in that, thank you, Scott, from the Scott treatment, which businesses capture the potential and power of video through post-production. Find out more at thescotttreatment.com. And I'm Jess Duell, and as Cheryl Locke would say, I just like to talk, and I talk a lot. So, so if you ever want to bat around ideas, you know I'm a person that will definitely have something to off the wall to toss out there and build around an idea. So let's connect. Visit jessicaduell.com. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.